First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude at being invited for this function and seeing so many of you, my ex-colleagues and friends. Some of them I have not met for the last decade or so, but it's so very refreshing to see all of you here. As my biodata or my biography would have highlighted, the fact is that I've spent more time in packaging than any other business. So while I'm very sympathetic to the FMCG business, I have a lot of empathy with packaging, paper, etc. And I continue to remain a great well-wisher to this industry, and I try and see in whatever little way we can add value to the industry, we do so. The objective of what I'll try and cover in the last half an hour is to give you a general idea about what are the kind of trends happening in the consumer goods segment of the Indian industry. Many of them you are quite familiar with. Many of them you are also experiencing as things happen in your own day-to-day lives. But the implications for packaging in the years to come would be fairly profound. First of all, I think one of the biggest trends which we are seeing in the Indian market is the globalization of the Indian market. So it's no longer an Indian market, but it's a global Indian market. By that I mean is that most international players who exist elsewhere in the world, most leadership players who exist elsewhere in the world are today also in India. In fact, the other day I was just trying to compile the list of the top 10 players in the global food industry. And I realized when I looked at them that all of them happen to be in India. And it is not just the fact that they are in India. Some of them are very dominant players in India. Others have just started coming in, and therefore they have got the share of consumers' pocket, consumers' thinking. And we do believe that with time to come, they would bring in a lot of what they do internationally also into this country. Therefore, the internationalization of the Indian market has begun. So we're already living in that sense in a very global economy, and the amount of competition that you can see happening in the consumer goods space would therefore not only be from an Indian perspective, but also from a global perspective. And of course, this has several implications going forward in terms of the kind of products that will be desired, the kind of products the consumer would be used to, the kind of practices the consumer would be used to, and therefore the overall expectation of the consumer in terms of innovation, in terms of standardization, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of taste, looks, the tactile feel will start changing faster than most of us would expect sitting here today. So I think that's one of the very, very kind of shift that is taking place. Shift number two, although not happening at the rate with which most people had anticipated, I do believe that modern trade will start playing a more and more important role in the lives of Indians, or in the lives of consumer goods manufacturers, in the life of the consumers in general. Right now, the share of modern trade, I know from my business, for instance, has moved from 5% to 8% in the last 4 years. And you would say, okay, so what's the big deal? 5% of your share was in modern trade, it's 8%. But I do see that in critical categories, especially if you're talking in premium, super premium, in newer categories, in categories which are just coming to India, the share of modern trade is as high as 35, 40, 45%. In fact, the other day I was reading that fruit, for instance, even in a category like fruit juices, I'm not talking about drinks of 200 ml, but the 1 liter fruit juices, the share of modern trade and the organized institutional trade is as high as 81 or 82%. Therefore, in certain categories, we are already seeing a preponderance of modern trade. In the share of shampoos, in the share of face creams and other premium products, modern trade is becoming more and more important in the lives of FMCG players and in the lives of consumers. Therefore, a lot of innovation or a lot of innovation-driven products are being serviced through modern trade, and that really believes it, and that's what gives me to believe that you will increasingly find that because the merchandise shift is going to happen slowly not so slowly now, modern trade will draw a lot of custom to itself, because there are things that are going to be available in modern trade which will not be easily available elsewhere. And certainly in the premium segment, the kind of role modern trade is going to play in this country is going to be immense. And consequently, therefore, implications for you as corrugated players, implications for us as manufacturers of goods, implications in terms of delivery timelines, in terms of costs, in terms of stack loading, in terms of using the outer or a corrugated carton itself as a display pack on the containers. These are the kind of trends that are likely to come in over the next 2-3 years, and we must be ready to face them. And this is really important. So whoever says that modern trade is actually not that dominant or not playing its role to the extent it should, must re-examine its statement in light of not total turnover, but in light of the fact that what is going to matter more and more is going to be dominated at modern trade. The third major trend which I see is that the key driver to growth from here on, because India is also experiencing over the next 2-3 years, I think it will be a kind of a slow growth India. It's not, I wish what ML Agarwal said comes true and we really reach those numbers of 11 and 12%. Why not? I hope so. But the chances are that we will go back not to the Hindu rate of growth of 2 and 3%, but certainly a little more Anglo-Saxonist growth of 6-7% or what it used to be in Europe many years back, but 6-7%. Therefore, in some sense, India will steady itself over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. And in that steadying phase, I think what really will be the key drivers to growth will be differentiation and segmentation. And a lot of emphasis, unless you differentiate significantly, you will not be able to shout out, or you will not be able to track the premium either from the consumer or from the retailer or the shopper. So to that extent, differentiation is going to become more and more important, because when the undifferentiated products are going to get far more competitive, because the industry has geared itself for a 12, 13, 14% growth. There's overcapacity, overproduction possibilities, and in a phase when you're going at 6 and 7%, the market is going to be very, very competitive. It is. I think the industry is ready to absorb a much higher growth rate, but the market is not growing at that rate. Therefore, I see that in the mid-range kind of middling products where there was a great consumer pull, I see a lot of competition happening here. And therefore, for you to drive growth, either your message has to be very differentiated, or your product has to be very differentiated, your packaging has to be very differentiated, and your segmentation has to be very differentiated or very right. And since India is now a large economy, I mean, it could be larger, of course, but since it's a large economy, therefore, a lot of segmentation which didn't make sense 5-6 years back is making sense now. So even the sub-segments have become of the magnitude that they can be exploited profitably. And as we all know, Indian taste, Indian color, what Indians are looking at overall is different for different regions. Therefore, there is an opportunity for segmentation, and winners will win. All those people who make the use of this opportunity will win. And I think next 2-3 years we'll see a lot of proliferation in that direction. While all this is happening, I think one interesting thing to realize is that, and it's a very, very slow trend, we believe consumers in India are premiumizing. Okay, so that's a supportive thing that is happening. It's not that, in fact, a lot of people ask me right now when suddenly the growth rates are slowing down, etc., etc., is there down trading? Are you witnessing down trading? I said, no, I'm not. Because there is an element of, you may not be going fast, but a lot of that shift and a lot of the growth is coming because of up trading. It's not coming from volumes, it's coming out of up trading. And what that means is that the very, very popular products and segments of yesterday, the 2 rupee price point and the 50 rupees a kg product is now giving way to a 5 rupee price point and a 100 rupee kg product. And in the biscuit example, it's amazing that for 90 years, glucose used to be the largest segment. 2 years back, glucose, which was at 50, 55, 60 rupees of consumer price a kg, gave way to cookies, which is about close to 100 plus per kg. And today, glucose has receded to the extent that it's become a 31% part of the biscuit industry, and cookies has really overtaken it, and in terms of volume is now an equal, but in terms of turnover is almost 1.3, 1.4 times. So these small changes which we are taking place at very, very mass segment is getting replicated industry after industry. What it means is that the consumer is expecting more. It doesn't mean that if people are going to have more money, because these segments are also going to be, the premiumized segments are also going to be competitive. All that it's being said is that, are you ready to offer the consumer more value? Okay, at not a great cost, but there is certainly a lookout for more value. If he is happy with a particular kind of packaging, a particular kind of breakage, he's not likely to be that much happy because he's wanting an enhanced experience, okay, which is a little more expensive, a little more uplifting, but certainly enhanced. And therefore, all of us, in terms of product design, packaging design, must be able to live up to that expectation. The other thing which also is happening while we are saying consumer is premiumizing, there is, with all the schemes that government is putting in, the Narega scheme, and the other day we are talking about the new food bill, which offers free food and puts 120,000 crores into the consumer market in terms of money which can now be spent for other causes. I think this entire concept of bottom of the pyramid needs a relook. And C.K. Prahlad wrote 5 years back that there is fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. I think the fortune may be visible soon. Okay, so we do believe that these kind of schemes, of course, Narega itself, we've seen a huge growth in rural demand. I think with the new food bill, whatever the economists may say, and you will disagree with the intent of the food bill, but the fact is that we do believe that over the next 7 to 8 or 10, 12 months, some of the impact of the food bill will be seen in consumer spends and in consumption at the bottom of the pyramid or close to bottom of the pyramid. And therefore, are we ready for it? What are the kind of products required? What are the kind of experiences required? Are we therefore saying premiumizing too early because there's a whole new segment which is likely to come right from below, and we must be ready for that upsurge? But nevertheless, I believe that from a consumer good point of view, this is a good news. This is something which is likely to start impacting us as many of these schemes, so-called welfare schemes, roll out in the future. And I do believe that the whole trick in this entire is not of diminished value, is not of giving consumers something which is lower in quality, but of giving very, very focused value to a consumer. Okay, and I remember Nitin Paranjpe from Levers once telling us that how they succeeded in making the 1 rupee shampoo pouch profitable when they went down south, and they realized that there was no money being made in it. And when they really looked at the consumer, this entire thing in Tamil Nadu was that ladies had oil bath, the rural ladies had oil bath once a week, and they wanted to wash it off with shampoo. And when they looked at their formulation, the more expensive part of the formulation of the shampoo was a conditioner. And what the conditioner did is that it gave the oily look back to the lady, which she didn't want. And these guys were spending money on an attribute which was acting against the interests of the consumer. So they removed that, made it better washing, but removed the conditioning element which was not desired by the consumer, and were able to give a great experience to a consumer. So we need to look at it very, very critically as to what a bottom of the pyramid consumer is really looking at, what really gives them value, what doesn't give them value, and focus it sharply by giving terrific quality product, but at a very, very focused value to a consumer. I think overall also the entire governmental policy across the country, and I think this is a major trend we've been seeing over the last few years, has been extremely supportive, whether of it be in terms of what the government is doing in terms of getting investments and encouraging investments, putting up, especially in the food business, putting up food parks, etc. And I think one of the learnings of the last decade has been that if you have a very, very positive government attitude in many of these directions, it is possible for the industry in this enabling environment to go a long way in engaging itself in growth. While having said that, it's also important to remember that while the government on one hand is going to be encouraging and is going to be helping in terms of creating growth, the government is also going to get more and more regulatory. Okay, so the regulations are going to become stiffer. I know in the food industry itself, over the last 2 years, with the introduction of an equivalent to called FSSAI in India, Food Standards and Safety body, which has come into existence in Delhi, regulations in my industry, for instance, have become extremely strict. And regulations in terms of what kind of products you can introduce, what are the additives you can use, how much additives you can use, what are the ingredients, how many times you have to inform the government, what is the new policy and licensing, where can you put up a plant, where can't you put up a plant. So we have to live in a world where the government is supportive of growth, but going to be extremely, extremely strong on health, safety affairs through regulate. We just hope that this doesn't lead to another kind of Inspector Raj, and we are in constant dialogue with government on what is right and what is wrong, what we believe is right, what we believe is wrong. And we do find that even in this, the government is taking proactive steps. In fact, one of the great proactive steps we want them to take is that harmonize the Indian standards with the rest of the world. So for instance, with Codex or with what's happening in Australia and the US, and that itself, the suggestion, although not accepted in black and white, but in reality, when you submit an application for a new product and you're able to quote standards out of Codex and FDA, we do find the government so much more, or these bodies, statutory bodies, so much more accepting of those products and those standards far more readily than they would have otherwise. So in this entire paradigm, I think it is important to remember that the packaging industry and the consumer goods industry have to be on the same page. They are partners in progress. Of course, I do believe that very many times it is adversarial in the sense that most of the consumer good industry, the people you interact them with are people who are actually professionals, they're not owners. And the packaging industry is full of entrepreneurs. Okay, and they have a lot of history. The manager has no history. He's got his quarter to target, and in 2 years he's gone, and then whatever you've done for him is all gone and forgotten. So that's a paradigm with which a lot of people are finding very difficult to adjust. And I can empathize with it because I have been through this paradigm myself. And I think you need to give maturity on both sides for this to happen. But my own experience in packaging and my own experience when I buy today is the fact that when people talk about a lot of service, I mean, what makes you a great supplier? It is not just about service, because I think many of them, those have become qualifiers today, the ability to deliver on time at the right cost, etc., etc. So that a lot more people can give, but fundamentally is about, and Shrupatik was talking about what differentiates his company from the rest and how they sell compared to how the rest of the world sells. It's about being an advisor, about being a knowledgeable consultant, about really being out there in the field, telling people what to do. See, you are the guys who are the experts in what you do, and you must realize that there are a whole lot of people on the other side of the fence who are waiting to use that knowledge to help them improve their own tasks. Unfortunately, many of us buy we may seem like cost cutters, but the fact is that if you can communicate greater value, if you can work to deliver greater value, if you can come with us to our warehouses and our storage points and our retail places and say, look, this is what I can do, and you needn't spend more, but this kind of damage that you're incurring or the kind of loss of product which the consumer is facing can be reduced significantly if you were to spend this kind of money or this little bit more. I'm sure more than half the battle would be won, and you would find a lot of interesting collaborators within the FMCG industry. And I'm telling you, knowledge is the most potent form of selling in whatever way. The moment you can add knowledge to your customers and to your offer, to what you give to a customer, you'll find yourself being the most engaging of all suppliers, and rather than a person who's just talking about prices and deliveries, etc., the basics. I think it is going to be a game of knowledge. It's going to be a game of education, and therefore I would appeal to all of you to get into that mode of thinking when dealing with consumers. So this is what I had to say. I wish this conference a great success. I think I would also like to apologize that it was not my intention to preach from here, because many of you are more senior to me and have been industry veterans and people I've looked up to. And I do hope that together we can create a different tomorrow for both the sectors, which is the packaging and the FMCG. Thank you very much.